Hi, this is Stacia, and today I'm going to share a training game that I played on chess.com. So, if you read my blog posts on changing my openings and playing all gambits, well, this game sort of embodies what's been happening lately, which is my chess has been getting a lot better. I'm experiencing an increase in my abilities. I'm at all new high ratings. Well, I play on lead chess as well, and I broke 1900 on lead chess and broke 1600 again on chess.com. And I feel like I'm just seeing way more than I used to. So I think this game kind of explains how I play aggressive now, and the stuff that I'm seeing that is resulting in a lot of wins. So let's have a look. Okay, I played e4, e5, and f4. So I went with the King's Gambit. This actually isn't my main opening anymore, but I still get in the mood for it. Okay, my opponent took the pawn. That's the objective best move. Knight f3, guarding against queen stuff. Anytime you move your f pawn, you better be looking at queen h4 check and make sure everything's okay. And this move. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second, because this is a strange move. I've never seen it before. And as you can see, this is a book move. So, okay. If I go to openings, it's called the King's Gambit Accepted Bonch Osmolovsky variation. First time I've ever seen this. Now, objectively speaking, I don't think it's a good move necessarily. The King's Gambit is very sensitive to wasted tempos. And if the plan is this, which I'm sure it is, to guard the pawn, then I think that's a little bit slow. But then again, maybe some grandmasters have played this, so it's interesting. Also, you're blocking the bishop, so you're going to have to move the knight again, blocking the queen. I didn't find this to be a threatening move, let me put it that way. But it did cause me to pause and think about, how am I going to win my pawn back? But, sometimes in the King's Gambit, you have to say, well, I gave this pawn for a reason. I want to play d4. I want to play bishop c4. I want to castle. I want to get my pieces out. So d4, what could be more natural? Creating the strong pawn duo in the center. That's sort of the whole point of playing f4. And the knight comes out. So he's defending this, realizing that after d4, I was threatening to win my pawn back with tempo. So he guarded it. But here I actually thought a little bit, because, well, when a knight is on a square like g6 or on b6, they are really subject to rook pawns. And so h4 immediately came to mind. Now, it looks like a weird move if you don't play these kinds of openings, but h4 is fairly normal in the King's Gambit, because, well, one thing I noticed is that if my knight moves away, let's say my knight moves away for silly reasons, then the queen check becomes possible. So I feel like h4 also can sometimes defend the h4 square, because now the rook is defending it. And one last reason is, a lot of times black plays g5 and you undermine the pawn chain with h4. So this is a normal move that you see in the King's Gambit. So I went ahead with it. I figured, hey, and this is something I recommend doing if you want to improve at chess, is if you see an idea and you think it's good and you can't see immediately why it's not good, then go ahead and play it in a game, even a tournament game. Play it. Play the move, because you know what? If you lose horribly, you will learn something. And to me, learning equals improving, and improving equals long-term rating gains that mean more than cheap wins. So I played h4, and I've done this throughout learning chess the last almost 5 years now. Bishop e7. I honestly didn't consider this move, so I was like, uh-oh. So he's saying that if I go h5, he could actually check me. And if I take with the, let's see, if I take with the knight, it's actually guarded by a knight and the queen. But after calculating this, I actually thought it was okay to push h5. So I did that. So he can check. That's true. That does not give me time to take the knight. And then if I take, he can save the knight. But I actually thought that the knight would be very off sides here. And that, well, this pawn might be useful. I can castle queenside. I can think about that. So the rook can stay here. And I thought this must be good for white. So let's see what he did. Yeah, he chose to bring his knight in. Okay, so I think taking the knight would just be silly. Why do I want to create this issue for myself? So I let him come in here. I think, you know, the knight was forced away from the pawn. That was sort of the point of h5. So take the pawn. Take the pawn. And yeah, I have to say, like, if I'm in a King's Gambit and I get to play this move, bishop takes f4, I'm very happy. I'm quite comfortable. I'm quite happy because now I have a center. I won back my pawn. I have a very good position, basically. And in the lines where they hold on to that pawn and I can't ever play bishop takes f4, then that light square bishop becomes a big problem and I lose. Or at least I'm very worse in the opening. So, okay, I took. And this move. So what do you think about this move? My opponent played knight takes knight. Why? Well, honestly, I think this is not a good move. Okay, so Black has been moving their knight on a journey. He went to e7 to g6 to h4. And now he's going to take my knight, helping my queen development. So I think that, honestly, I think this might be a losing move. Knight takes knight is probably just too many tempos lost. So this was played. Instead, I think, you know, Black could castle. That's one thing. Although I'd be nervous with this pawn here. So maybe a move like d5 is warranted. Just blow up in the center. Say you're going to take my pawn, kick my knight. Like, do something. It opens up the bishop as well. I think d5 is probably correct. But okay. Knight takes and queen takes. And, you know, my opponent has the same rating as me in playing this way. And this is what I find a lot in my new style of chess, is that I'm seeing a lot more attacking ideas, but my opponents don't know them. And they don't know opening principle like this. Like, don't move your knight a million times. Whoops, not there. If you move your knight a million times, you're not developing these pieces, and you're not moving your pawns in the center. And white is, so that's going to equal trouble. So let's continue. d6. So I think my opponent was saying, okay, I feel comfortable. My knight's not on this weird square anymore. And now I'm going to stay solid and develop a castle. And good luck trying to checkmate me. Okay, so challenge accepted. Bishop c4. This is the most natural square for the bishop. The Italian diagonal, hitting f7 and making the king uncomfortable if he wants to castle. So my opponent played here. Bishop e6. Now, I think taking the bishop would be a mistake. He could take with the f-pawn. He has not committed his king yet. But even if he does, I think, you know, the f-file could be useful, potentially. I'd be nervous of this still. And he may just castle queenside later. So I don't think I should help my opponent this way. So d5. I'm not excited to push this pawn necessarily because now my e-pawn's weak. It makes e5 harder to achieve. And the most important reason, I like when my knight comes there, and now it cannot do that. It's occupied. But in this case, I think it's warranted. Let's see if the computer agrees. Check with the engine real quick. Yeah, d5, strongest move. Second best is knight d2. Just getting the knight in the game. Oh, and that defends the bishop. Okay, fair enough. I like d5. This bishop is my attacking light square bishop. So I'd like to hold on to him. And then when I get e5 in, he'll have a new diagonal. If I get e5 in. But I'm up so many tempos, like it wasn't even a question. Okay, so bishop here. Self-analysis. Whoops. Okay. Sorry, let me adjust here. Okay, let's continue with this game. Knight c3. I think this is a very practical move. It prepares castling on the queen side, and the knight just needs to get in the game. Now, I know it looks like the knight has no good squares. That is true. Like, I can't go here, I can't go here. So it's kind of annoying that the knight doesn't. But I was planning on putting him on e4. So the reason is I'm going to play e5 and put him on the e4 square. That's called clearance, Clarence. Plus e5 is basically the thematic pawn push that you often want to get. Okay. a6. Yeah. So I know what I am Calvin Blocker would say. He would say lack of foundation. Yeah, my opponent, he needs to make developing moves. He does not have time for a move like a h6, as you will soon see. He already lost way too many tempos already. So I castled. In this position, though, I feel like castling is kind of a weak move. Probably white has better. I could think about e5 right now. I could probably think about something like h6. Forcing moves. So if you don't know this opening, or not opening principle, if you don't know this principle of chess, then listen closely. When you have your pieces developed, and mind you, I'm one step away from castling, so my king is quite safe. And your opponent doesn't. His king's in the center. I mean, he is one step from castling, but this looks scary. And he still has a knight here. He still has a rook here. Okay. When that is the case, when you have more pieces developed, you should open the position. And the best way to do that is with pawn breaks. So I think e5 or h6 are actually called for here. And I went the conservative route and castled first. Now this can't be bad, but it's probably not best. The rook is now across from the queen. Oftentimes that's useful. My king's safe. All right. c6. c6. Wow. And that's all I can say about that move. All right. My opponent's idea is this. c6, I take. He gets to develop. I don't have my center pawn anymore. There's only one flaw. I do not have to take. And I don't think he wants to take me, because then my knight comes to e5. So I don't like this move. I think it's incorrect. Probably black needs to do something like, I keep thinking castling, but castling seems to walk right into an attack. Maybe bishop g5 is a move. My bishop is pinned to my king, so this would trade off some pieces. Maybe that's helpful. I don't know. Another move might be b5, just It's a tempo on the bishop. But okay, let's continue. Okay. So I might miss e5 once, but if you give it to me again, it's happening. So e5. And now I think black's just in huge trouble. I have some threats. You know, the knight can now come into the e4 square. The pawn can take, and it's defended by this bishop. I could take here. That opens up the light square bishop. So there's a lot of pressure here. And I honestly don't know what black should do. My opponent castled. That's probably the best move, but it's probably also too late. So here I decided to take the pawn. Oh, and in analysis, I actually learned this is not the best move. So if you'd like to pause your video and try to find the best move, go ahead and do so now. And just like a real chess game, it might be a winning tactic, but it might be just a good move. Okay, so the move is actually queen g3. This move is very strong. Okay, so if you play attacking chess, you know that this is a common move. We're across from the king, which means this pawn is pinned, which means we're threatening bishop h6. Now, the thing I like about that is the bishop would like to come to f6 and defend, but it can't do that. So black would have to take. And now black is helping to open the position. So, and wow, we can play h6. I didn't even think about this, but that looks very strong, doesn't it? So I guess they could play here, but now I can take. This looks very horrible. The dark squares are getting pummeled. I mean, I would think about this move if I was black, but it feels wrong somehow. Let's see. Take, knight e4. Yeah, and the knight is going to check here at some point. Or even worse, queen here. So wow, we've got a lot of attacking ideas coming into play. All right, but let's continue. Sorry, I like chess too much. I get sidetracked. Okay. So here he played, yeah, so I took the pawn. That attacks the bishop. And he has to move the bishop. And then I played h6. Okay. So h6. I thought this might just be a useful move because if I take here, it opens up the rook down the h file onto this pawn. So there might be issues there. But also if he takes, it ruins his pawn structure. And also it undefends the bishop once. So maybe the bishop will become vulnerable. But he played g6. And g6 is also, you know, very risky. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of tactics puzzles where there's a pawn in the position, like on f6 or h6. And yeah, if I can put my queen here, it's checkmate. So g6 is very risky. This square is so weak now. All right, I brought my knight in, knight e4. So if I can actually trade off dark square bishops, I think that's going to be very beneficial to me. But also bringing a knight to the center is useful. And like I said, I played e5 for this purpose. My opponent retreated. And wow. Yeah, that's all I can say, I guess, is wow, because you just don't have time for moves like this. When you're being attacked and you're playing a King's Gambit and every tempo matters, you can't play moves like a6 and knight here, and you can't do all this stuff. Like, you just don't have time to do whatever you want. You have to be very precise in how you develop. And so the bishop there, I think, is just horribly wrong. So I play bishop g5. Yeah, and I think it's coming to an end soon. The bishop's attacking the queen, but it's also doing some other things. I've now opened up my queen down here. That means that this square is especially vulnerable. And what do you do? If the queen moves away, I can actually put my bishop here. Let's try this. Like if queen here, I could put my bishop here. I could even check. Checking looks fairly strong. This looks strong. If here, he cannot take. That would be horrible. So, but how do I proceed? All right, let's look at knight check. Knight check. Now he does have to take. Now, oh, I'll take with the queen for sure. So now this is coming into fruition already, as you can see. So, yeah, so I don't know. My opponent actually played f6, which is kind of what I thought he would play. And even though I didn't calculate, I knew that f6 must be bad. And do you want to know how? Because Ben Feingold always says never play f6. Yeah, but it's especially bad here. It just weakens this more, these squares, but also the king side in general. And yeah, it actually opens up this line. So this is a pretty natural move. D takes c6, checking the king, and I think it's done for. So my opponent played the best move. He resigned. Yeah, because there's no way out. But I think rook f7 is the only try. I could actually take. And after king takes, I was thinking here that I could go c7. That's a move. I could take the bishop. I could even take here. I actually think this is probably a move. Because, let's see. If takes, I could even go knight g5 check. Notice the bishop is pinned. And it's really annoying that the pawn's covering the square. And after something like king f8, yeah, maybe now c7. c7 is just a killer. I don't know what else to say about that. Where does the queen even go? I mean, if you go here, then you undefend the bishop. So this is not good. You cannot block. I'll mate you. Yeah. I think game over. So after rook f7, you could even play this immediately. I bet that's fine. Just leave the tension. So, and yeah, they're not going to take here because then that's checkmate. So yeah, that was the game. And you can see that a large attack like this, it doesn't happen by accident. Black made many moves that wasted tempos. And let's go back and look at that just to emphasize this principle. Okay, he took there. This is good. But when you take the pawn, especially, that's also a lost tempo and it gives up the center. You're doing that to win a pawn. So it's okay. But then you got to be really careful about spending 2 tempos on a knight move. If you're going to do this, you better play d5 next. Okay, I think developing the bishop's okay, but now a lot of tempos get wasted. The knight took here. This is probably losing already. Okay, that's a developing move. Bishop c4. That's fine. That develops. But now a6. You can't play a6 here. I've never been so mad. All right, castles. c6. Also c6. Not working. I do not have to take your pawn. I can just break it open. Yeah, and I think black's just in too much trouble already. I mean, he wants to develop his knight, but that's the worst knight ever. He can't go anywhere, and his bishop's attacked. He has to move it. Yeah. So I tried to play forcing moves every time, and they came very natural, as you can see. Bring the knight to the center, threatening to take the dark squares. Now threatening the queen. That's a very forcing move. He has to do something. Now it's a check. That's a very forcing move. And that was the game. So, yeah, so this King's Gambit resulted in my opponent resigning in 18 moves. Yeah, this didn't happen in Queen Pawn too often. So I'm very happy that it seems like my new openings and my new gambits have been paying off. Of course, I don't always get games like this, but I'm understanding more about chess. And so I hope you guys do too. I wish you well on your chess journeys, and I'll be back with more chess. Thanks so much. Bye.